Hi, everybody. It's Ron, and we're here with another day of headlines. We got some good ones today. What we do here is we add some context and commentary so we can understand what's really going on behind the scenes and what's really at stake. So let's get right to it. Right away, we have this situation with Iran. I think Iran has denied it, but apparently Iran sent a drone. It killed some U.S. troops that were stationed in Jordan, and now pressure builds on Biden to confront Iran after U.S. troops killed. Now, if he did this, it would be breaking a sort of a long time policy or a concept. And the concept is that with the 1979 revolution, after that, the new Islamic Republic encouraged people to have a lot of children, young people. And that created this huge demographic bubble. And such a group of people that comes after a very conservative generation usually is going to rabble-rouse. It's going to change the country. We see this many times in history. And we have seen in Iran a lot of protests from young people. And really, despite what maybe the media concept of Iran as being a very conservative, maybe dour place, it's actually very modern and cosmopolitan, and with a huge youth culture that seems to have a lot of power in unconventional ways, in ways in protest that can oppose the government. And it's thought that the U.S., this has been for many decades now, the U.S. should tread carefully with Iran and not stirring up things there, fighting them directly in situations like this, because it would empower the small group of radicals. In Iran, you have the Revolutionary Guard, which is it's a military group, but they dominate all parts of society. They dominate business. They've kind of captured the spoils of the country, and thus they have a lot of incentive to maintain power and maintain their ideology. But that small little group, the Revolutionary Guard, perhaps is growing smaller by the day as you have more and more activist young people. So it's thought, instead of attacking Iran directly and empowering the conservative elements, just let time pass, and in time, this demographic bulge of young people will create change and moderate the society and knit them into the rest of the world, as Iran is a very modern, cosmopolitan place, despite some of their foreign policy that you would see. So in a lot of other countries, the U.S. is not really that hesitant to strike them, because those countries do not have any geopolitical significance. But Iran is one of those countries that can cause a lot of trouble. Is wealthier than a lot of countries. It's situated strategically there in the Persian Gulf, and as I say, it does have this preset idea that change is going to come organically, and you don't want to maybe muck around in open conflict with Iran. And on top of this, in very near terms in time, we have this concept where people are afraid that what's happening in Israel, trying to get rid of Hamas, that this could be widened throughout the Middle East. And clearly, Iran is trying to do that, because they seem to be behind the timing of the Hamas hostage taking there in Israel. They wanted to scuttle the peace deals between Israel and Saudi Arabia. They're certainly behind the timing of what's happening down in Yemen with the Houthis. So Iran is poking and prodding, trying to extend this. Certainly, you would think with the cooperation of Russia, Russia wants, the West to think that things are very overextended in the world, that the U.S. forces are overextended, too much money being spent, too many war fronts. So anything that expands what's happening militarily overseas is good for Russia too. So I'm sure they're encouraging Iran to do these things, possibly even China. You see, China would like to make some moves in the South China Seas and in Taiwan, and all of these countries see a once-in-a-generational opportunity where really the U.S. that pays for all this stuff and has its troops on the ground, that the public doesn't seem very amenable to more and more foreign conflict. So if Biden did attack directly Iran, he would be giving Iran what they wanted and Russia what they wanted. And further, what we have is the nuke warnings. This is kind of giving Biden a little bit of cover to not directly attack Iran, because it's saying that doing so would kind of be an open signal for Iran to begin developing its nuclear capability in a big, big way. Certainly, Iran has seen the lesson of the Ukraine, where in the 1990s, the West got all of those Soviet republics to give away their nukes on security guarantees that the West gave and that Russia gave, that Russia would never invade them. So a couple of years ago, Russia invaded them, and the West couldn't do much but give a little bit of money, and now that money is kind of drying up. So every country in the world is saying, we can't, better not give up our nukes, and we better probably get some nukes. Because, see, that was the mistake that Ukraine made. So these days, it's not a good time if your issue is nuclear disarmament, because of all this, there's very likely going to be none of that nuclear disarmament in any of our lifetimes. Okay. Had to adjust the air conditioning. Okay, let's get to the other news. Amazing turn of events here for Biden. You may have heard that in the United States, the Republicans or the opposition hate foreigners or something vis-a-vis this immigration policy, something like that. But the reality is that for some reasons that are not clear, the Biden administration had a very open immigration policy, allowing many illegal immigration into the U.S., after which the U.S. government would take care of these illegals hand and foot, kind of resettling them in border states such as Texas and Florida. Not clear why the purpose of that was, other than virtue signaling. The U.S. is a nation of immigrants and has had a lot of immigration. But over time, this policy has come under fire. So now it's all going the other direction. So what's happened is Biden sees that Trump is the de facto nominee of the party, and he's going to have to go up against Trump. And Trump, he presents things in very broad, sometimes crazy ways, policies, and they're going to hammer home on this immigration issue. So Biden is saying he's going to shut down the border in the same sort of terms that Trump has. This is all kind of electioneering, and they even make a point how the Republicans don't really like this because it's a political issue, so they're trying to scuttle these deals. I'm sure they have excuses that it doesn't go far enough or something like that. But see, Biden is getting himself positioned, after several years now of a lot of media cover that portrayed immigration as business as usual in the United States, and anyone who opposed it as some sort of a anti-American racist. But here we're going into a political season. We have news items. I remember the first time many years ago, could be 20 years ago, that I saw an article on maybe AFP, maybe it was a news aggregation site, about what had happened on Survivor. And I thought, this isn't a news article that you put in with other news. This is an article about the events of a show, not a show being canceled or renewed, but as if the events of something that happened within a TV show are now news. And it was just the harbinger of a lot of celebrity news like this Nicki Minaj and Megan Thee Stallion. Almost, it sits this sort of gossip that used to not be within news before the age of the internet. The old newspapers, you'd have stories about a movie or the production of a movie or how it did. But this sort of gossip or stuff like about Survivor, what happened on the show, was not news, but it is now. That's the power, the change of the internet. Here's what else do we have here? TSA facial recognition. Whoops. I have the JavaScript block just to protect you from these news sites that just want to serve you photos of infected toenails. So I think, on balance, this sort of thing is good. It's being used to protect against terrorists, drug dealers, something like that. But obviously, the worry is, what if the government uses this power for something else? What if they decide that everybody should be vaccinated for something and people don't want to, and they decide to use a system to track down the unvaccinated? Now, I always get my vaccinations, but this is an example in recent years of some people who kind of saw vaccination wrapped up in their political causes and maybe irrationally didn't want to have a vaccination. I would assume that's sort of their right, but we can see how systems like this might be abused for some sort of political reason in the future. Maybe, we saw Australia used to be a gun-toting country, and then one guy shot a bunch of people and they took everybody's guns away. What if, something like that possibly could happen in the United States? It's probably a good thing, but again, it's just, what's behind all of these worries about the security systems being used that are so good. Artificial intelligence now is in the mix, that you never know what some future government that gets its majority might want to do with those systems to impress its own little hobby horse of legislation. Here we have feminine Christ poster. All of this can be seen as the power and the superiority of Western liberal democracies, where an artist is free to do something like this and we are free to criticize it, and all of this can exist in the same space. A lot of religions, a lot of cultures try doing this in one of the Arab countries with their images. It's not, in those countries, they've intermeshed culture and religion into their government. So you don't have the same level of freedom that we have here. So even if you don't like someone doing something like this, it's a symbol of the freedom of our way of life in the West. AI spam already beginning to ruin the internet. I would say it's done quite a while ago. Google as a search engine is sort of useless. The first page is full of the sponsored results. It's not even, you make a carefully crafted search query and it just doesn't follow that anymore. It gives you something it thinks that you want. In the past, when you looked up something on the internet, you would see lots of people's personal pages with lists of links, forum ideas, thoughts, things that are outside the kind of bland mainstream news articles about any subject that give more context and background, like somebody on Slashdot talking about, oh, I worked in this company, and then here's some of the background and the context. But today, the first few pages of Google are always filled with, big corporate links, New York Times, and just these bland articles that I'm trying to add context to. So, and of course, we see on YouTube, are you detecting more and more YouTube channels that have these AI-generated voices? Even how many of those YouTube sites that talk about history capture a little phrase from any of those, and see almost all of them just are scraping stuff off of Wikipedia. And those guys who you think, oh, they know so much because they're talking about these subjects. They're just reading Wikipedia articles. So I do think going into the future, people will turn away from the internet. People will try to rediscover themselves outside the glare of social media, and they will become more rebellious again. I also predict this. I think someone will create a 16-bit computer, maybe graphical only computer, and we will see a new kind of internet. Someone will develop an internet that's all text-based, like it used to be, the bulletin boards, so we can get back to information and sharing information person to person, rather through these big corporate gatekeepers and these big search engines that are trying to feed us other corporate garbage that they're paid to feed us. So this is accelerating right now. Egyptian pyramid renovation sparks debate. Egypt is one of the great places you want to go to, even if it's unsafe sometimes. You don't want to die without seeing this place. So here's this interesting article. It's from AFP, but hard to understand what they're getting at. It says there's some protest about some renovation that's being done on a pyramid at Giza, saying that there was blocks of granites were set at the base of the pyramid. And then it explains, of course, that when these pyramids were initially created, they were created with smooth white granite or marble on the sides, which was taken off by other civilizations down the line to create mosques and things. So it doesn't say exactly what they're going to do, but it implies that maybe one of these pyramids is going to be recovered in this white granite, which is sort of intriguing to me. They probably shouldn't do it, but somebody's saying rather than tiles, why not wallpaper the pyramids? So not quite sure what is going on with this article. Not a very good article, but it's intriguing. Kardashian to star in Elizabeth Taylor biopic. This is one of those clickbait articles they expect everyone to go on there and express their outrage about. For Europe and NATO, Russian invasion is no longer unthinkable. This is half an article, half an advocacy piece, criticizing Trump, criticizing the Republicans, criticizing the U.S. for not being willing to put up the money to protect some of these rich European nations. I mean, how many times have like a German person or a Sweden person, scoffed at your country or United States and talked about their cradle-to-grave welfare system. They all have high taxes, but it's the United States taxpayer that has to pay for the defense. And you will see this in this article, which is a grave warning over Putin's pronouncements and his supposed goals in Europe. And again, it's all about these European countries fretting over what the Biden administration will do and how they're being stopped from doing it by the Republicans a little bit. And here this is now. See, for me, I do believe the United States has to pay for this and create the order that it wants to create in the world, and it has created in the world. For all my cynicisms, I mean, it is easy to say, Sweden, Germany, why don't you pay for it yourself? What is all this hand-wringing about what we're going to do for you? You're right there. This is something you should be handling. But the bottom line is that if the U.S. wants to be safe and wants the world we want to we have to continue being the world's policeman. Even though we have $34 trillion in debt and really no good health care provisions for our people, except Obamacare, which is something. It's good. So, but even beyond that, we have Trump returning to the White House has forced Europeans to come to grips with the possibility that all American support and even its leadership and role in NATO will be drastically reduced. So one way or another, it might be these countries are going to have to handle this themselves. That would be something indeed to see. They might have to cut down on that cradle-to-grave welfare system and then all their great health care. So, not to be too cynical, but here's the other thing. So articles like this always go together. Whenever we hear about a new danger to the West or a danger to the United States, Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran, Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, Chavez in Venezuela, there's always an accompanying article that tells the public that that new enemy is physically decaying. This is part of almost a delusion that the West has. We do believe, and I think it's probably true, that our system is the system of the future and the right way to do things. So it's hard for us to conceptualize villains that oppose us. And as part of this coping method, we always conceptualize these villains as physically decaying. So, you know, Saddam Hussein, you hear how he was supposed to be so sick, but he wasn't. You know, Osama bin Laden, what was the first thing you remember hearing about him when he was coming out in the press after 9/11? He was very sick with kidney ailments. This, you know, and also the implication that our villains, our Western villains, are always just about to die. And here we have it here again. Maybe it helps us with our fear that we're really not in control of things in the world, to believe that those who oppose us are sick and about to die. Well, I think that's the news for today. Here's my book. Young people find their dreams and failures in Bangkok, and then go on to the furthest places in search of something the modern world can no longer give. This is the story of There Are Still Unknown Places, my new novel on sale at Asia Books and on Kindle ebook. It's a tale for a new generation, disillusioned by the promises of the world, wanting to search for their destinies in far-off places. That novel, my new book, does explore some of the stuff I talk about here with News in Context, about young people who are disillusioned with the ways, the promises of the world, who start to see through the context of the way things are, and who want to explore themselves maybe outside of the realm of social media, who want to who find themselves driven to the furthest places in the world as the world is changing in a startling way all about them. So before we leave here, we always take a card from our Art of War playing cards to see what a Chinese guy who lived more than a millennium ago can tell us about living in life, our business, our personal life today. So today the card is make an example out of another. Strategy, defeat a single adversary of merit so others concede without fighting. The basis to a lot of things is fear. Fear compels the vulnerable to seek your favor or stay out of your way. I think we could say in our business or personal life, this is something like pick your battles. You can't fight everybody. And we all know people who are kind of nuts and they're always they rebel against everybody. But we got to pick and choose our battles. We have a certain amount of physical, mental, social power that we can apply to any one thing. So you might want to take that amount of power you have and apply it to one thing, one win to get the biggest bang for your buck. So people will either want to run away from you or will want to glom onto you and be part of your power circle. So that's the news for today. We're in a fantastic, interesting year now. A lot of big things that are happening around the world. A big juncture in history. It's going to be Trump against Biden. Both of them are crazy wild cards in their own way. And we have a world that's unsettled and knows that America's unsettled now too. So it might be an opportunity for some of America's enemies, their physically decaying enemies, to make their move in the world. So it's going to be exciting, and we're going to need a lot of context and perspective. So I will see you tomorrow for more headlines.